8:06, welcome back to Acadiana's Morning News. Rob Kirkpatrick with Bernadette Lee, and we continue to prepare you, I guess, for the election. You're going to go to the polls. Coming up, we decided 23 days from today, and one of those running, Captain Clay Higgins in the 3rd Congressional District, on the phone with us now. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Bernie. Wow,
Great.
23 days.
We're getting close.
It's been a marathon, but the finish line is in sight.
So we are asking the same 5 questions to all the candidates so you can hear from them on some of the biggest issues that you've told us matter to you in this election. Captain Higgins, I'd like to start with just looking at your predecessor. Dr. Charles Boustany currently holds that seat. How would you do things differently going forward than Dr. Charles Boustany has done, or anything different you want to start with?
Well, I have a great respect for Dr. Boustany, of course, as a man. And one of the struggles that he faced, a gentleman of good heart, pure spirit, he faced the coercive efforts of the establishment in D.C. You know, and we've seen this again and again as voters and just regular Americans, that a representative that we'll elect and send into Washington, be a senator or congressman, will sometimes take postures and positions and cast votes that don't seem to reflect what they anticipated they would stand for. And back home, you know, we look at that and go, wow, why is that happening? And I think all of us need to grasp just how powerful and insidious and coercive the establishment forces in D.C. can be. So, you know, while I have a great deal of respect for Dr. Boustany, I met him on several occasions, and I know him to be a man of good spirit. What I would carry to D.C. is the voice and the will of millions of Americans from across the country. It's a very unique opportunity for the people of the 3rd District to send a guy, you know, amongst that pit of vipers in D.C., that carries not just the voice of the majority of voters in the 3rd District, but the voice of patriots from sea to shining sea, literally millions of supporters. So that's a loud voice that I'll be carrying.
Let's move on to some of the issues. With the oil industry, in the turmoil in Louisiana, how do you help those many in Acadiana who are facing layoffs, who may have been laid off, who are out of work? How do you help restore jobs and the industry, in the oil industry here in our state?
Well, of course, in my opinion, and I've been vocal about this, the federal government's boot is on the throat of the oil industry, and in many instances, it's on purpose. You know, the current regime in D.C., the executive branch, has written hundreds of executive orders and decrees through, you know, various branches of the alphabet government, primarily the EPA and the DOE, and they've restricted the oil and gas industry specifically to injure it. And when you combine that with the trade deals that they've allowed to move forward or actively engage in producing, that have just been devastating, it's colossal failures for the oil industry and the gas industry in America to allow Saudi Arabia to sell oil for less than the cost of production, specifically targeting the value of oil nationwide. You know, personally, I think Saudi Arabia should face sanctions for that. And the Iran deal was just a complete disaster. It needs to be torn up and thrown away. That hurt our oil industry.
Let's move on.
We have to deal carefully with Russia. You know, Russia's a massive entity in the world player on oil and gas. I think the federal government moved in the right direction earlier this year by allowing the sale of oil overseas, but we can do more by removing the restrictions and regulations that have been written by executive decree out of Washington over the last 8 years.
Let's move on to the issue of race. As a state that has had its own issues with race, How do you think race will play a role in how you execute the office as the congressman?
Well, I've actually had a great deal of experience of addressing race relations as a spokesman for law enforcement. Rob, I speak across the country to large law enforcement gatherings. I'm telling you, across the South, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, throughout the South, Connecticut, Alaska, California. I've spoken across the nation to massive law enforcement gatherings, specifically on challenging topics. And one of those, of course, is race relations, the relationship between the badge and the citizens that we're sworn to serve and protect. And the bottom line is that our job as a police officer begins with an oath. That's an oath of allegiance to the constitutional principles that our badge is supposed to represent. And that calls for unwavering observation of civil rights. Once you address that on a national level through our police forces from sea to shining sea, man, my brothers and sisters of the thin blue line, they get it. When you have that conversation with them, you connect the dots between the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and civil rights that were sworn by our last life's blood to defend. Then race relations automatically improve in those communities. I've received letter after letter from police chiefs and administrators of large law enforcement organizations across the country. I've spoken there that message resonated within their departments and their gatherings. They've returned to their communities with a different sort of an attitude, and race relations have improved. So we can fix this thing, but we have to do it with love, compassion, and determination. And we cannot allow this violence to take the streets, this uncontrolled gang violence, this rioting and burning. This must be stopped. But you have to couple that with a compassionate, clear understanding of constitutionally principled police protection.
So, Captain Higgins, what does your first month look like in office? What would be your first order of business?
And I have to figure out where to park, man.
And then
I'm certainly not a politician, Rob. As you know, I'm a patriot. I would imagine that my first month would be establishing, my staff very carefully and determining, from bended knee what the priorities would be, what bills were being presented, the schedule looked like for the United States Congress, and how I could fit in best there to serve the people of the 3rd District and, by extension, the people of America, which is just strong constitutionalist principles. So my first month in office would be a very steep learning curve for me. I'm a regular American that would be stepping into the halls of power with a great deal of humility and respect for those that came before me, with the determination to restore the voice of we, the people, amongst the halls of power of Washington, D.C. So I'll be a loud, clear voice there, my brother.
All right, as we wrap up, Captain Clay Higgins has been joining us on the phone. 5 questions. Captain Higgins, we've ended every interview with this question. What is your biggest flaw?
My biggest flaw, I would say, is that I have a tendency to be perhaps too trusting to individuals. I try to see the goodness in us all, and sometimes that has failed me. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Had betrayals in my life and people that I would have never thought would be insidious or attached to some sort of evil design. And I've done this again and again in my life, and I guess I'm just not going to stop. And you know what, Rob? I don't want to. I would rather continue to see the what I hope to be the goodness and the love and the compassion of my fellow man and be proven wrong and to become jaded about the way I feel about my fellow man. So,
Right.
Perhaps I'm too trusting and endearing and compassionate. I guess that's my biggest flaw.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. 5 questions, a series that Bernie and I have taken on leading up to the election today, joined by Captain Clay Higgins. We thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you calling me. Have a great day, Miss Tony.
And as you know, we have all of the interviews on our website. Look for 5 questions. All the candidates we will have on. Bernie has been like a little hamster. She's been on her hamster wheel right outside this room every day trying to get everyone on in time so we make sure we have enough time.
Even though my hamster has one gimpy leg.
Yeah, you got it. All right.